Right, hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Joint Flows. Today we are joined by Tom Lavery, the CEO and founder of Jiminny. How are you?
Hey Hitesh, yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good to be here.
Awesome, it's great to have you. We always like to start off with a little bit of introductions. So if you could paint a little bit of color in terms of who you are, how you got to where you are, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I run a company called Jiminny. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders there. We are conversation intelligence. So for those of people who don't know what that is, we record, transcribe, and analyze video, voice, and email. So we help customers use that data to improve performance, drive revenue. And before that, I was a SVP of sales for a tech company. That's what gave me the inspiration for Jiminny. So I've been doing this SaaS tech, probably AI thing, if you want to call it that now, for 20 years. So showing my age a bit, but yeah, started in sales, worked my way up. So a little bit unusual, a sales-led founder, which you don't always see. But obviously that plays a big part in the platform and what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about being a sales-led founder because when we look at the founding team that we have at Joint Flows, like 2/3 of it is of a similar background. You know, me and Mick are very commercial, very sales orientated as well. What would you say were like some of the biggest challenges, like straight off the bat, when you're coming up with your own company and taking it to market?
Yeah, you got to have balance across the team, right? So I have a great technical co-founder. My wife's, as you know, is one of my co-founders as well.
Yeah,
she's a great people leader and got lots of sales experience as well. Do you always have something missing? There's always some domain experience missing in a co-founding team. So you've always got to hire where your weaknesses are. I think when you're commercial, let's just call it that, or customer facing, you want to talk to customers a lot. Yeah, probably more than if you're maybe an engineer or a product person by nature. So therefore, you learn the most from listening to or changing the talk track, doing a demo, dealing with a renewal, getting feedback on a new feature. Like, because you're kind of, that's ingrained in the way you operate. I think you just are much more attuned to listening to that and taking it back. So what I did in my last business with my previous founder is like, I'd run sales and I kind of bring back the inspiration even for the features and products then that we'd build in the roadmap. So I think that's a strength for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you mentioned there, which is quite interesting, is having that balance. And I think, you know, knowing what you're good at and perhaps where there's opportunity to get somebody else in as well. And a huge part of that is about being self-aware, which is a lot easier said than done. Is there anything that you think helps with helping people become a little bit more self-aware? Any kind of exercises or something you can do?
Oh, exercises. Self-awareness. So like some things you can nurture and some things are nature. I think you can train yourself to do certain things, right? Like I know my bad habits. So like sometimes I'll like go on a Monday morning, right? I'm going to go into these meetings with my exec team or the team, and I'm going to be in listen mode. Yeah, not Tom talk a lot mode. Because you learn way more when you listen than when you talk, right? But these some things come with time. Even like, being able to, give really honest feedback instead of, dancing around certain subjects or whatever, but doing it in a be kind way. So I think, yeah, if, depending on your personality type and what you do, I think there are certain behaviors where you got to train yourself and check yourself. Like, so being open to doing that is probably the first step. If you can't really open mind to go, actually, I can't just behave like I do all the time. I have to adapt and change,
Yeah. Not related, but question about the market. Like we are seeing a lot of, like we spoke about this before we pressed the record button, but consolidation, acquisition, mergers. What's your take on where the market is currently going?
Oh, wait, in tech, SaaS, or sales?
Yeah,
Specifically,
sales, sales tech,
sales.
SaaS, yeah. Like, because I've got a background with outreach and all of that, and you know, like you hear all sorts of things, and like sometimes consolidating is good, sometimes it's not good at all, sometimes you want to do it, sometimes you're better off not to do it.
Yeah, I think it's very confusing for buyers in the market right now, to where they put their dollars and what they do. Nothing is a finished article. Like, I think it's a trade-off. Like, do I get a really good apple and an average orange? Do you know what I mean by that? Or
Yeah.
do I get a really good orange and an average apple? And that's probably the trade-off for where a lot of things are. I think the smartest kind of RevOps people I speak to are kind of piecing together what works for their business. So you can't go from like 5 tools to 1 tool and expect to solve the problems in the same way. But can I go from 5 to 2 or 3, doing the things I want to do in the right way effectively? Like we were just talking before about, we've just launched a new Salesforce app in the like it's going in the App Exchange, and customers are like really excited about embedding and using our data in Salesforce and being part of that experience. That's another way to help customers, I think, to look at how powerful your product is and how they can use it within what they've already got, which is definitely something that we've looked at.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a point for being able to work from everywhere with your favorite tools. But there's also a strategy where, well, especially from our point of view, we're like, okay, we want to live in Salesforce, but it would be great if people actually went to Joinflows to do Joinflows stuff. You know, like how do you strike the right balance based on your experience, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, like we go right through. We have, as you know, you use our platform, but you go right through from a mobile experience to a web experience to an experience within the CRM. So there's never one size fits all. Every customer is different, and then every user is different. So you might have a company, a geo, but then you got, right, how do the execs use it? So we try to think about it like when we train stuff in, like across the team, is like, what's the use case for C-level? What's the use case for like RevOps? What's the use case for management? And what's the use case for like the AE or the CSM? So you know, there's enough. You might have an exec might just go into the mobile app, right? But then the team might be using it in Salesforce, but then a RevOps might be actually going into the Jiminny platform and running much more detailed reports and data. So I don't think there's a kind of right or wrong answer. As you evolve your product over time, you just got to make sure you're guiding the users to use it in the place that most benefits them. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's in my world anyway. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I think being aware of all of those users as well is also reflective of, I guess, the buying committee that you see nowadays as well, right? So you're getting more and more people who are involved in making decisions as to what tools to onboard and offload as well. Are you seeing that as well? And if you are, what kind of challenges is that presenting your team with? And then what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
Are you talking about the amount of people involved in
Correct.
like a deal?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's there's definitely, if you give like a classic sales example of like MedPick, right? Where you have like a champion, you know, and then you've got like you know, your economic buyer and everything else. I think you're sometimes, depending on the deal size, you might have to realize that you might even not be able to meet or see that economic buyer, but you then still have to influence them or train your champion or your decision maker to influence them, right? And what tools and skills do you enable them to do that? Because someone's always selling your product when you're not there. So how well do you train them to sell it? Because you can't be in every room, in every conversation. So I think, you know, not always, but like you're probably one step further removed. So how are you being creative, thinking outside the box to do that? Some of the things that like we've done is like, you know, you go back 18 months ago before the market turned a little bit, you ping a proposal, someone make a decision, bang, 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 everything's a bit easier. But now we might take that, consolidate it into a 2-page business case that has set KPIs that they're going to achieve with using our software within a 12-month period, but we might get the like the basically the champion or the decision maker to be the author of that document, make it a collaborative document. Then we might tag on, depending on the personality type of the economic buyer, it might be more detailed or it might be less detailed, because we'll ask them like, well, Sheila or Andy better than anyone else. Do they want the detail or do they want high level? And then we'll create like maybe a custom video if we can't get in front of them, embed it in there, and some of the other tools we use. So I think it's about like, there's not just one sale all the time and go, right, I'm going to follow these steps. It's being creative, so you can control it like a project, really. It's a lot of sales is, I always believe passionately, is like, there's a science to it and there's a process and there's skill, but also it's just being organized and project management and making sure you're guiding it through the ways. Everyone kind of forgets about that bit. You've got to be organized,
Yeah. You're speaking joint flows language there, Tom. So very good.
There we go. Exactly.
Tom, we also see a lot of RevOps noise or RevOps hype. I don't know how to best place it, but nothing works now without having RevOps in the picture. So how do you navigate that from your position as, okay, there's a new stakeholder involved? It's a good sign, it's a bad sign if they do get involved. Like, what's your opinion on RevOps at the moment?
I think it depends on the size of the company. Like is it one RevOps person? Yeah. And they're like doing it for the whole company. Are they a small team or are they a massive RevOps team? Like SMB, mid-market to enterprise. So I think it's like, there's, whether the ticket price for the software, your software, this is 10K, 30K, 40K, whatever. That is not the price of doing this. That's just the ticket price, right? So if we're X and the competitor's Y or whatever the price is, what's the ongoing costs of making this work and getting value and return or solving a problem or a challenge? So it's like, how are you getting them to think about that and how are you helping them with that? And that does fall on RevOps for me, is like, fundamentally it's their job to make, whether it's joint flows, Jiminny, something, whatever, it's like, make it work. So I think it's like, how are you enabling them to make this work? Like, we have multiple layers to that, from support, onboarding, enablement, and CS. So, I think that's what people want. If they're going to invest dollars right now, which is harder to get people to do, they're going to absolutely know that it's going to deliver. So I think it's just supporting them and their team. Like, for us, it's become over time like our main ICP and our buyer. So I think you can just embrace it, that they can be your biggest driver of revenue and your biggest advocate.
Do you feel like they should take the responsibility to go and find new projects to implement, or should they be more like of a passive actor to, as you said, like enable, connect, and unify the data sets?
Oh, it's like salespeople or VPs of sales that come in all shapes and sizes and flavors, right? I think there's people who are really proactive RevOps and kind of visionaries, if you want to call it that, in terms of what they're trying to do. Some are more like revenue focused, some are enablers, and they more take direction down from the CRO. So I think it's very, very company and business specific, and a lot of the time is linked to the culture of that company. So I think again, it's really making sure you can tie what parts of your service or product need to, help them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I always believe that there's going to be something in it for everybody. So that includes RevOps as well. If it's making their life easier, making them a lot more agile in the way they can work as well, because more often than not, I see RevOps teams being very overworked or in demand is the right word to use. One of the key kind of, I guess, conversations that I tend to see happen with RevOps is around adoption. of the tool. So it'll always be, okay, so yeah, this, I get what it does, blah, 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 but this is just another tool, right? As we were saying, there's so much tech that people are using now as well. What's your approach in ensuring that adoption doesn't fall to the wayside? Because it's very easy as an organization to get something within the door, do the handover over to CS or whoever it might be that manages the account, but maybe the communication doesn't continue between those two teams as well. And that's where adoption can fall as well. So what kind of mechanisms do you guys put together as a company to ensure that your clients are adopting the tool?
Yeah, I mean, to go back, Hitesh, to your other point,
yeah,
RevOps own the tech stack. So if they own the tech stack, it's maybe a bit of an unwritten rule right now, but then they probably own the adoption of the tools within that, right? So I think that's the reality if you're in the sales tech ecosystem. Yeah. So that I feel like that's the way it's transitioned over the last few years for sure. In terms of how we do it, I think it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, there's like kind of 4 layers for me. So there's like sales, engineering, technical support. You don't have to have loads of people to do this. It's just like how you do it, whether you're a small company or big company. So are we technically supporting them to do all the right things, like auto-generating stuff rather than getting them to create, right? So there's the technical onboarding experience. How much of the heavy lifting, because it's everyone's biggest thing is still time. Doesn't matter if you've got a 5-person RevOps team or a 1, it's time. So like, how do we take away the heavy lifting and support in terms of technical setup? Then when it comes to adoption, we separated this out a long time ago. So we have a separate enablement team to our CS team. So that runs training, workshops for every type of user and use case that we have at Jiminny. So, you'll get 10x engagement and adoption if they have like 2 welcome sessions, an onboarding session, a follow-up session. They then start to use part of it as a strategy. So, and then we actually put that into like an online portal this year where you can get like certifications and stuff like that. I'm a big believer that whether it, everyone's under pressure in the growth team, sales environment. So they want answers quickly. They don't wait around. So like our support chat has really strict KPIs on like response time. Like I think the average is about 43 seconds. So we get back to people really quickly, and that does drive more engagement and adoption because we're super responsive. And people just when people want help or they got a question or a query. And then kind of you layer on top, which is usually I think where people go first, is a CSM. So CSM can be more of like a strategic partner to be like, okay, right, we've got all this core value working, right? That's enough, but that doesn't maybe stop you switching for something else or consolidating. How are we driving what we call like higher value? So if the business goal is X, what metric needs to improve in your team? This is how we'd run our QBRs. What metric needs to improve within those teams for RevOps? Then what parts of Jiminny are they going to use to improve those metrics? And then how are we measuring that result over time? So it's very clear that we're taking it way above the software to what actually they're talking about in their OKRs or what the business needs to achieve. So yeah, it's like it's multi-layered really, I guess, like a cake in terms of like how are we doing things technically, how are we enabling and training, how are we then supporting in real time, talking to the users, and then how our CSMs the most valuable asset they can be working with the owners, if you want to call it that. Sometimes RevOps, sometimes other roles.
Yeah, you guys, your support team is lightning fast, crazy. Like you're basically on Slack with someone straight there. How do you? So we speak. We're quite close to the Jiminny team, like the likes of Freddie, Becky. They all speak extremely highly of you, your wife, your leadership style. Like, how do you build such a good lasting culture in a growing company?
Yeah, it's not easy. Everyone like I think the world's changed a lot in the last 6 or 7 years. Like if I go back to 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, when I was running sales at Royal Gateway, you wouldn't recognize how you do business today. Like it's completely changed. but there's lots of positives to that as well. I think, look, if I was going to boil it down to one thing, is just that everyone makes mistakes. I'm not perfect all the time, nor are the team. I think if you just stay true to your values the best you can, that's what you can do, right? So we created them from the beginning. They've evolved over time. I do a training slide in our onboarding, and I talk about the team owning the culture, not me, James, or Shelley as founders, but like if you have a mission, like your why, why we exist, what we're building for, and then you live your values, you put the two together. That's what creates the culture. Those two things. Culture isn't like free beer, hoodies, cool swag on your desk when you join. Those things are nice and important. But it's really about, like, do I believe what we're doing? Am I keeping it? Am I brought into that journey? And when I work with my colleagues every day, I'm in meetings. Have they got my back? Do I like working with them? Is it fun? Is it enjoyable? Because at the end of the day, we're just all people, human beings working together. So I think it's that part probably, that the people working together and working cohesively together and enjoying each other's company is probably what defines, not just Jiminny, but defines a good culture anyway for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things I wanted to talk about with you as well as an experienced founder with a product that's doing very well, is what I'm seeing within the tech space is, to go along with consolidation, is a lot of people developing their products. So, they're not necessarily staying, I don't know if this is the correct way of saying it, but staying in one lane. They're kind of encroaching into other lanes and developing their product to go into a different area. So, for example, you might have Outreach, who started off with sequencing or cadencing, however you want to say it. And now they have some element of like call intelligence software within there as well, and so forth. How do you see this? How do you see this ending up? Because there's so many people who are either acquiring different companies and adding them towards their portfolio, or they're developing products as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it all depends on your size, right? Like if you're a Zoom Info and you're a public company on the NASDAQ, it becomes about a few decimal points on your upsell. So like you can't knock them for their strategy at that sort of scale and size. You have to look at kind of new avenues. If you're on a journey from like 10 to 40 million, there's probably like different inflection points where it feels right to do these things. But like from where for you guys are, it's like focus, I think, is like be the absolute best at that, because people will always want that and always need that. I think the biggest thing is like being distracted. Like if I look at, let's just call the intelligence space, like I don't think anyone has the right to call themselves revenue intelligence yet and put that label on it, because it's too difficult to see exactly what you're doing. So I think you've got, companies can earn the right to maybe get there. Like, for example, just being able to tell you, why do you win? Why do you lose? Who's your top rep? This is why the conversion rate's down 5% and what happens. Like there's a journey to get there, and, really taking things like video emotion into consideration, mining data from other points. So we're generally just excited about like how many ideas we've got. I think we're lucky. Like we're an AI company anyway. We've transcribed calls for a long time now. We're starting to use machine learning to summarize them. And I talked to you about our kind of Ask Jiminny feature where we're prompting back information. So we've kind of got this thick wrapper of data around the CRM, which makes us valuable. But I think, it's just stick to your knitting and stay focused. I mean, even post the investment, I wrote a strategy doc this year, which is help from my chairman on like for the business, like laying out what the crown jewels of the product, really looking at our TAM and ICP in a deeper way. There's much more to it, but I thought I was focused, but then I wrote that and I was like, well, we weren't. And again, this year, from another year's worth of growth and data, what we know now and how we can focus the go-to-market team on what's important and who we go after is just night and day. So I think just back yourself and stay focused. Don't get too distracted by the noise. Like we're saying, it's the one, you think it's everyone on LinkedIn, but it's like, you think how many people are on LinkedIn and how many connections you got. I don't know what I got. I don't know. It's like 15,000, 16,000. Still not that many people. It's like half a football stadium, right?
Yeah.
But like, what are you really seeing? Everyone you know and everything you know. So like, still like 80% of our customers have never, ever, ever installed or put in conversation intelligence in place before. So you could get like wrapped up in something that could keep you up at night worried, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I think you've just got to take your own perspective on the market, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you say, obviously, being an AI company, there's like, I see two different views on AI in tech as well, where some people are a bit more apprehensive about it and a bit scared. Obviously, you're going to be pro AI as well. What do you see as being the strengths of AI going into tech? And, you know, some people are concerned because they're going to be like, well, AI is just going to do everything. So, you know, if you strip it down, it means there's probably going to be less for me to do. And therefore, we're going to require less resource to get the same work done as well. So what's like the pros? What would you say to those people who are concerned about the role AI is going to play?
We've been listening to Elon Musk too much. No one's going to no one needs to work anymore, right? Yeah. He's smoking too much weed on Joe Rogan or something. But like, no, in all seriousness, I think it's like everything's like stuff is moving fast. You can develop and code way quicker than you used to. There'll be a balance for sure. I think it's the first wave is like, how can you do things more effectively? So like, for example, today SaaS is like 20 years old or whatever, and you have to go in and go, I want to find something, click, 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 run. Yeah. And it's evolving to a world where you're just like, tell me this, give me that, you know. Which is just a way of using the data to be more smarter and effective. Like, I don't know, like if you're building features and functions and interface, is that the right thing to do versus, you know, pushing back data and insights to your customer in the right way? So it's, I think, but you need a balance, right? Because you need the core functionality. You could build the best AI model in the world, but if it's not solving the other problems underneath to a good enough extent, then people aren't going to buy it too. Yeah, but like I think you know, it's not going to be like 2025 and, you know, AI is doing sales demos. I can't see that. It will take time, maybe in the future. You know, for sure. I've seen some interesting software where they like trying to automate a cold call for AI and different things like that. You know, still sounds a little bit roboty. But look, I remember when you'd have transcription and it was like 50, 60, 70% accurate. Now it's like a movie script almost. So, you know, things move, but it takes time, you know.
And you said something very interesting, Tom, about I don't think anyone can call himself revenue intelligence. Like what would it take? What's your view of revenue intelligence, and when you can start calling yourself what in this category?
Well, if I think about our mission and why we started, is like, how do you help salespeople be the best version of themselves? I think, you know, everyone else has different reasons why they exist, or maybe they lose them over time or whatever. But ours, like, if we're working with a team, could be 100 sales reps, could be 10 sales reps. How are we helping each AE or CSM get better? That's why we started the company, right? So maybe in the early days, it was like, oh, I could see on my calls like Spotify, listen back, give coaching feedback. For me, what AI gives you the opportunity to do is go, right, Mick, you lost this deal. There's like 25, 40 emails, 7 calls. If I sat down and listened and read each one, I'd probably work out what fucking went wrong. Yeah. But you can train the model to look at that and see what happened. So for me, I think it's really exciting to solve our original mission, which is like, oh, Mick's win rates dropped by 5%. Why? Here's 3 reasons. Lastly, what do I do as the manager to fix it? Well, how do I help Mick? So I think it's exciting, really, because you just can, all of this could have been done manually or intuitively before, just always a time thing, or it could be a bit more subjective. But I think you're going to get to the point where we can solve the mission and the problem faster. Like when we originally set out, the company is like, it's funny, I was looking at in our design, like Figma thing or whatever, where we keep all our designs. And like 5 years ago, we designed some sort of like Jiminny chatbot, which gave you like answers and feedback. Like the technology didn't exist, but we always had the concept in our head that you could like look at a number of calls and give feedback and analyze it. That just the technology exists to kind of do that today, or try models that you can train.
Yeah. What made you go into call intelligence? I understand the underlying mission is to help everyone improve and get better, but why call intelligence? What is it that made you pick that specific, or the founding team even pick that specific avenue?
Well, there was two sides to it really. So there's the visibility stuff. So the data capture was a nightmare. Like people writing stuff on notes, calling on a desk phone. So like, where does everything happen? It happens on the phone. I believe that video first was going to be the way that everyone would sell. So there's a data capture piece, and we built it back to front. You probably say, why didn't a telephony provider build the CRM? Because that's where, rather than it being the other way around. But so there's the data capture bit, and look, we had a passion for developing people, investing in feedback, coaching. So it was like, that's why it led down the voice route. I think there's a lot of, when we first started Jiminny, there's a couple of companies obviously that are older than us. I didn't know about them when I started Jiminny, blind ignorance, or you could have done better due diligence.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but I think when you look at like enablement, there was lots of like role play tools, content stuff, and I just had a real hunch that like salespeople aren't actors. They don't like doing role plays. They want to do everything in the moment. They just want to like, let me get out there and try it. Let me try this. Let me test that. So I believe that the real learning was in doing. So there was that piece, and then the whole content stuff. Like again, how often do they read stuff? Does it, So I think it was the most powerful way I could see people improving and getting better. And it had the most insight. So when we put all those pros, like the pros and the lists of doing it, it all just led back to the conversation. Like we talked about it in the early days of our pitch. Like your most important asset is your customer conversations. You just can't see them. Probably the most important bit of data that a business has. I think the whole industry needs to get better at, like, so powerful. It's probably the most powerful data in the marketing and sales tech stack. It just needs to get even better at giving answers, which we're obviously working on all the time.
Yeah. I did just a follow-up question to that as well. So this is my assumption, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. But when obviously COVID hit, right? And all of a sudden everything was done over Zoom or Google Meets or what have you. I imagine that there was a real spike for Jiminny and Jiminny-like companies at that point, because it's like, well, everything is being done online. This makes sense. And it's continued in that way, where obviously there's still a huge percentage of conversations being done in this way, like we're doing today as well. But there is also now starting to become a growing increase in people who are starting to do things face-to-face again as well. Do you find that, or do you feel like this is going to be an issue for companies like yourself, or do you just feel like it's not really an issue?
No.
Was my assumption correct to begin with the COVID stuff?
Well, I was living in the US when I started Jiminny. I moved there in 2012, 2013, and I could see, it was called inside sales then, and I could see fundamentally that, under 100K, people just weren't traveling. The technology was good enough. So COVID or no COVID, it was happening. Yeah, it was going to be inevitable. I think COVID just sped it up, and then sped it up in Europe a little bit more. But no, we kind of had the same. There's lots of tech or remote teams, hybrid teams, people selling on like Zoom or Google Meet. So I feel like in our ICP, it was kind of getting that way already, because they're early adopters naturally. But I think maybe we have like what I call like non-tech companies sign up now, and it's like 2 or 3 years on, and it's kind of like, wow, they're doing like 50% of their stuff on Teams, which is still enough. But you know, if I went back to 2017, they wouldn't have probably been interested, right? So it's just evolved. It's probably a balance. Yeah. But I think on meeting face to face, like, again, my own experience, I just think it's very hard. You're selling to a corporate or an enterprise, they do an RFP or a tender, and then they've got 2 people in the north of the country, 2 people in the south. And you want to get everyone down to the office on the same day so you can go in and meet them. Then there's a lot of blockers to meeting in person now, but it's hard, even if you want to do it. If your team are good at pushing it, I think it's not an easy thing to do consistently.
Maybe a slight change of topic, Tom, but as an entrepreneur, like how do you remain sane at home? Like how do you switch off from work? Is there something you can apply?
Well, what's the definition of sane?
I don't know. I've lost it a while.
So you work with your wife as well, Tom. So when you go home, do you just carry on?
No, we have some house rules that we've developed over time. Like Shelley's got some, you know, senior role in the business now. With, you know, we're bigger. So we don't like. Still have to check myself. But we don't really talk about work in the evening. Like if I'll call over at work, whatever. So try to like stop working by a certain time. So I won't talk about work in the house, and then I don't work personally after 9 o'clock. I try. I break these rules, mate. By the way, like I don't. I'm trying to get better at them, but like they're things I'm trying to work on to like not do that. And I know it's like when I was in the early days when I was like your size, you know, me and James would be like up on the phone till like 1, 2, 3, sometimes just doing anything we can to keep it breathing, you know. You've got this constant feeling of today everything's going amazing, we're winning, it's going to work, and then the next day it's like, fuck, it's going to fail, we're going to die. But it's like that probably happens to me once a quarter now, but it used to be like every other day, you know. So like you don't have those emotions, so it's really difficult. It's hard.
We've got these conversations because sometimes it happens multiple times a day as well. It's like 12 lunch, you're like, I think this is dead. And then at 1 o'clock, you get good news. You're like, I think we've got the best company here. Like, no one can beat us.
I think you just got to have just real belief in what you're doing. And, you know, it's just never going to be a straight line. It never is. You know, someone said a great line to me once is like, companies don't fail, like people give up. You know, like, you know, what is it, like 0. whatever % of companies make it to like 10 million or whatever, and even to 1 million is a very tiny amount. But a lot of the time founders fall out, they haven't got the right balance. People just fall out of love with what they're doing, they find it mentally too tough. So there's lots of reasons companies like fail. They haven't got the right salesperson, they haven't got that domain experience, because you just got to get out there and sell it. So look, there's you know, it's tough, right? It's definitely, I think in life, modern, like, and probably most people can go get a job and hold down a job, but to start your own company is like no one will understand, you know, till they actually go do it. Like I remember saying to my old boss, I was like, why didn't you tell me how fucking hard this was? Like, it's like year two of Jiminny. And I was like, I don't know. If we've been selling 6 years now, like with a product, 7 years, because you have a year building it and get going or whatever. And I was like, year 2, and he's like, Tom, you wouldn't have fucking listened anyway. Like, it's like you gotta go. It's like buying a house, having a baby, getting married. No one can tell you. Your dad can't tell you like, oh, it's like this. You just gotta go do it, and then you find out what it's really like. You know, you experience it for yourself.
Amazing. Tom, really appreciate you having on. We are almost out of time, so we do have a wrap-up question that we typically ask, which is, through your whole career to date, what is your favorite memory and why?
Oh man,
I get that reaction a lot.
Yeah. Favorite memory. I'll go back to Reward Gateway because like I feel like the Jiminny journey is just I can't feel like I can look back on it because it's like one still going, it's still running. So it's hard. Like there's lots of great moments of Jiminny. I've loved it, but I feel like it's still running. So I think at Reward Gateway, you know, one of the things I try to do, which is difficult, is like everyone's like, oh, when we get to this ARR, when we have this many clients, when I hire that person, this will all be okay. This will all be all right. But I think sometimes just enjoying the moment, like some of the best bits. Like we started in Moor Gateway in a crappy little office in Westbourne Grove that was 10, 15 minutes walk from every bloody station because it was so cheap. So like, it wouldn't matter which one you come from. So there's like 8 of us, and then Moor Gateway the other few months ago sold to Edenred for like 1.1 billion, you know. And I just look back on some of those early days when you're the challenger in the market, and we had like 50, 60 employees. We did our first private equity management buyout like that 2010 to 2012, and you know, that was like a real highlight for me of just learning this whole world. So I remember, probably that that run up in year where we started doing 2-3 million of sales a year in the UK. Tech or SaaS wasn't a thing, and then we did the deal with Inflection. That kind of moment, that era, if you want to say, around 2010. Yeah, awesome. I look back on that fondly. Yeah,
amazing. Well, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast. Until next time, thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank
Bye.
you.